Very good day to everyone. Welcome again to Word Crumbs. We are on the 28th day of these sound reflections. And really, if you are still with me, congratulations. And how wonderful your perseverance to really try to understand how the Psalms um, help us to pray directly to God and not just to understand it, but to practice it. It's so different to know and to feel, oh, I'm so in love with this person. But another thing is to spend time to talk to that person. And so the Psalms really introduce us into the spirit of conversation with God, expressing ourselves to God, and learning to feel and realize that He is really with us. Which brings me to the um, the response of today. God is with us. God is with us. This is our mantra for today. The words, four simple words that can fill our minds, and let us try to make it fill our hearts. So, not just our minds, and to know it, all right, God is with us, or God is with me, but to really bring it down to the level of our hearts. As we always say, the greatest distance in the world is not Mars or Pluto or another universe, but it's that space between our minds and our hearts. And there's so much of a distance to go and a journey to go to bring what we know in our heads, to experience it deeply in our hearts, and to be convinced about it and to experience it. So, God is with us. Let us go to the psalm itself to see how we are invited to deepen on this mantra about the presence of our God. So the psalmist begins, His foundation upon the holy mountains, the Lord loves the gates of Zion more than any dwelling of Jacob. Glorious things are said of you, O city of God. So, what a beautiful image in the beginning of this psalm when it's talking about God's foundation, meaning God's people, God's city. And this name of the city was Zion. Zion was the capital of Israel, and it was the mountain where the temple of God was built according to the scriptures. So it really represents the dwelling place of God, where God dwells with his people in his temple. And these words, the gates of Zion, it's an image of entering. When do you see the gates of a city? When you enter that city. So it's that image that the psalmist gives us is this invitation to enter the city of God, to enter into God's presence, walk through the gates. Don't just stand there admiring the doors, the gates, the figures. Um, go in, go in and experience um, God's presence. And this, as the psalmist says, glorious things are said of you, O city of God. So, this excitement, like a visitor, as you go to a pilgrimage site or you go to a city that is very famous or well known, but you know that this city is famous for God's presence. And you want to go in with that enthusiasm and excitement of a pilgrim entering into God's city amongst God's people. And our response is God is with us. So this people is affirming the presence of God in this city where we belong. Let's continue with the second verse, the next verses of the psalm. I tell of Egypt and Babylon among those that know the Lord, of Philistia, Tyre, Ethiopia. This man was born there, and of Zion they shall say, One and all were born in her, and he who has established her is the Most High God. God is with us. Now, this next few verses is kind of interesting because from the city of God, from Zion in Israel, we are suddenly transported to Egypt Babylon, and other cities, foreign cities like Philistia, Tyre, or Ethiopia, other nations, if you like. So, and it says there, it talks about, I tell of these countries to the people that know the Lord. No, among those that know the Lord. So there are those who know God, even though they belong to these other nations. And then they say, this man was born there. So it's like, if you remember the exile, the Israelites were actually in these places because of slavery. And it's like saying, hey, do you know that this guy was born in the city of God? He actually comes from there. And for those who are curious, you would know that you have to talk to this person to ask him or her about um, this place where God can be found. Now, how many people are actually looking for God today? You might say that our world is a very atheistic world, or at least agnostic, or we can't be bothered. No, it's so technological, we're so economically inclined. People don't care about God. Well, that's not really true. If you really look at the statistics of how many people are looking for God in their own way, perhaps not in the traditional religions, but they're looking for something that goes beyond their human possibilities of what they see and understand. And the scary thing is if they look in the wrong places, of course. What's the role of the major religions in the world? It's like trying to say, hey, you know, we have been researching about God, experiencing about God for centuries and for millennia. And if you want to look for God, please don't just do it by yourself. Of course, there's something very personal about that search for what is transcendent, what is spiritual, what is beyond. But there are people who can guide us, like signposts, institutions, and especially religions. And so it's like as Christians, we belong also to a religion. And we are supposed to help people, to help others, to point them towards this God that they're looking for. How? Through our kindness, through our own patience, through our own manners, no, in order that we can really introduce to them the hope of God that we have. Now, the question is, as Christians, how would you point people to God? I invite you as a challenge today to think about it. How would you introduce somebody to God's presence yourself? Don't say bring them to a priest. Don't say bring them to the pastor. Don't say just bring them to church. Well, it could be these are very external ways. How would you yourself bring somebody closer to God um, in your own way? Now, I'll just leave you with this question as we move on to the next part about pondering how to show God is with us in our ordinary ways. And it says here, they shall note when the peoples are enrolled. Interesting words. This man was born there, and all shall sing in their festive dance. My home is within you. And again, God is with us. And so it's talking about like the enrollment, meaning like the census. No, do you remember Jesus went to Bethlehem to do the census, or rather Joseph and Mary did it, and he was still in Mary's womb. So it's like that. No, they were in a foreign place, and when they enrolled, the people would see, this guy is actually from there. So when are we ready to do that, to be that sign and say, hey, this guy is actually a Christian, this person is actually a believer of God? And then it says here, they shall sing and do their festive dance. They will celebrate knowing that there's somebody who can bring me closer to God. And coming back to the question, so how can we fulfill that role that people are looking for in us, from us? And these are the words, my home is within you. God declares, my home is within you. Where can you bring people to God? Through you, through your life, through the way that you speak about God, through the way that you live with God. You might say that sounds quite abstract. And a very simple way that I'd like to propose, if you're thinking, or I invite you to think of somebody you want to bring closer to God, all right? I think Christianity should not limit us to just me and God alone. Christianity is basically about reaching out, helping more people to know God. So I invite you to think of somebody today that you, please, beyond those who are so close and near to you, think of somebody who is not so close, not so accessible. Maybe you don't often think about, but he or she is there. Think about this person. How would you introduce this person, bring this person closer to God? I invite you to do an exercise today. God made his home in you, in your heart. Ask him. Ask him about this person. Talk to him about this person. Talk to God who is with you about how you can bring this person closer to God. Lord, what can I do? What can I do today? What can I do this week? Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe you're busy today. But how can I gradually bring this person closer to God? And please try to do what God tells you. And we will see how God is really with us. And God wants, it's not fair that we can experience how close God is with us. And there are people who don't know how to experience it and don't know how to pray, don't know how to talk to God. And it's all they need is an introduction from us. As they say, this is just an introduction. The rest is up to you. The rest is up to them. So that's all we need to do. Introduce them to this dwelling of God so that they can sing and do their festive dance and celebrate just as we do. You are never alone. In the midst of all this that we're experiencing, you're not alone. God is with you.